The great gift of that Father Ciszek had, and that's miraculous, I think, is that he was able, in the midst of being part of the Soviet Gulag, imprisonment, exile, questioning by the KGB, all these insane experiences, he's able to find the presence of God every day. And part of that is that daily offering, but part of it also is his ability to reflect and to recognize the things that were consolations and the things that were desolations. And this is where I think there's something to that Ignatian spirituality that has a very, very practical application to life. And so as Father Ciszek was dealing with this stuff, he was able to see the things that were consolations, and he was able to recognize those things that were desolations, so that when he needed to, he could make the right decisions, or he could hold off on taking a particular course of action because he knew that he was in too much of a place of desolation to actually take that step. On that very practical level, then, how can people best understand and discern what they're experiencing in the moment so that they know when it's time to act, when it's time to move? And maybe that's too vague. There's not enough specificity here.
I was going to say, can you define consolation and desolation just for our listeners? That way everybody's on the same page.
Sure. Yeah, this comes out of St. Ignatius Loyola, founder of the Jesuits, who in his spiritual exercises has what's called rules for discernment, basically discerning God's presence or the presence of the enemy, the evil one. And in his rules for discernment, he defines desolation as those movements of our heart, our spirit, that are tending away from God, where we're feeling a distaste for spiritual things. And consolation, on the other hand, would be those movements of our heart, those experiences of our spirit, where we feel drawn to God and we feel a peace and a joy drawn to spiritual things. And so, your question is, how do we discern those in the moment as we're going through life? And this is where I think, Father Ciszek, coming out of his Jesuit formation and learning about what is called the examen. It's more than an examination of conscience at the end of the day, but it's something that St. Ignatius recommended twice a day, at noon and at the end of the day, to look back on the day and to ask oneself not only, what did I do wrong, or where was I struggling with temptation, or where did I give in to sin, the kind of normal thing we do with an examination of conscience. But his idea was to look at the day also from the perspective of God's presence. How is the Holy Spirit leading me? How was I responding to the Holy Spirit's guidance? In other words, also the joys of the day. And this is one of the things that I think is maybe unique about the book that I wrote, is the major part of it is to begin the day with a daily offering. But at the end of each chapter each day, I have a review question in which the person is asked to look back on the day that was just lived, and to look back in light of the offering that we made, to ask one simple question about the day, hopefully to tease out of one's prayer at the end of the day, what were the movements of one's heart? Where was God present in the day? And I think developing that habit of a morning offering and then an evening review helped Father Ciszek then during the day to be more conscious of God's presence and his own response to that presence of God or presence of the enemy tempting him. And that's what made him a more discerning individual during the experiences he had in the Soviet prisons and gulags. And that's what I hope. That's one of my hopes, is that the book would be not just a way of making a morning offering, but also of helping people develop that habit of reviewing the day that was offered so that we can be more sensitive to God's presence in our daily lives and moments.